It would have been nice to get this attention in any other context. Wikileaks has kicked the hornet's nest, and the swarm is headed towards us. We were right in the spotlight's glare much too early.
You know, Satoshi had created this new money, and he was very much worried that they were kicking the hornet's nest, is how he put it, at too early of a stage in the project, and that they may not survive a government attack. He also, I think, close to that time, started to question if he should be part of the project, and so Satoshi eventually disappeared.
Bitcoin had become the currency for those who wanted to remain unknown at all costs.
You can get anything on the internet nowadays. Cars, homes, and now black tar heroin. This is Silk Road, the anonymous marketplace. On the main page, they proudly and openly sell LSD, marijuana, and ecstasy.
Bitcoin is this thing that has no political bias. So it's this truly free, permissionless network for storing and moving value.
It is not anonymous, but rather pseudonymous. The Bitcoin register, the blockchain, is transparent and open for all to see. If there is a court order because of possible criminal activity, the state can search the platform, just like a bank. They're allowed to uncover your identity and your finances.
The virtual world is not an encapsulated parallel world. It is actually closely connected to our world. Every digital action can touch real life.
You know, it was a huge revelation to me that it could survive something even for an illegal use case, which meant that its protocol must be really, really robust and sound. This is before I completely understood how it all worked.
I did not create Bitcoin to protect criminals. I wanted free and autonomous transactions. And then Silk Road drove up the value of one Bitcoin to $30. That's when I decided to back away from the project. No more public posts. Only a few private emails to Bitcoin developers. I will only guide and advise, that's all.
Why did Satoshi disappear? I remember he disappeared after Gavin Anderson came back and said, hey, I just had a meeting with the CIA. They wanted to talk to me about what Bitcoin is.
I got an email in April 2011 from Gavin Andresen, one of my programmers. He had accepted an invitation from the CIA to talk about Bitcoin.
Satoshi never wrote an email ever again. That was it.
Gavin knew nothing about me, not a thing. But I made a radical cut anyway. I didn't want to take any chances. I knew they would do anything to find me. But I knew they wouldn't succeed. The program didn't need me anymore. It was stable enough to grow and fulfill its function for whatever purpose.
I was a little bit surprised that it happened so soon. I would have thought that he takes a bit more leadership in the project.
I think Satoshi understood, and this is why he stayed pseudonymous. He knew that if there was a human behind the project, that would always be a weakness.
No one is responsible. That makes Bitcoin less vulnerable to attack. There is no one to prosecute, attack, arrest, or convict for founding Bitcoin, or for having power over Bitcoin. No one has power over Bitcoin, not even the founder. We just know Satoshi's writings.
We know that he's an English speaker. He uses some UK spellings for words, but he only does it twice. We know what times he posted on the Bitcoin Talk forum, what time zone he may live in.
Whenever someone is thought to be Satoshi, they say, no, Satoshi can't be like that. But we don't actually know. If Satoshi is a genius, he's bound to be a little strange and not average. He can change.
That's the extent of our knowledge.
I'm not in Bitcoin.
But your address
Not in Bitcoin. I don't know anything about it.
64-year-old Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto emerged from his Southern California home Thursday and walked right into a media frenzy, hours after Newsweek magazine claimed he was the mystery man behind Bitcoin.
Yes, I was around in those times, but I was very annoyed with the Newsweek research. What Newsweek did is they found a guy named Satoshi Nakamoto, and they're like, we found him. Satoshi wouldn't have chosen his real name, and so they were literally looking for a John Doe, found John Doe, and said that was Satoshi. It's very poor journalism because they went to his home, they kind of harassed this guy, and so he was put under the spotlight, and he was just a very quiet dude. He didn't really want to be found. So it was a very uncomfortable position for him and very unethical on Newsweek's part.
The main reason I'm here is to clear my name that I have nothing to do with Bitcoin, nothing to do with developing. I was just an engineer doing something else.
When the first transaction occurred, which was 9 days into the Bitcoin blockchain, Satoshi Nakamoto signed some amount of Bitcoin that they had mined and sent it to an address that we know belonged to Hal Finney, a computer scientist who was one of the first people interested in Bitcoin and communicating with Satoshi Nakamoto.
Hal had built reusable proof of work. He had kind of built some of the key components that enabled Bitcoin to be successful. Satoshi was asking for help in terms of people needed to help him get it all built and help mine it and kind of incept it. And so Hal and Satoshi worked together, and Satoshi sent him the first ever Bitcoin transaction.
Only an autonomous system can be free, and Hal understood this. Bitcoin isn't just a digital currency. It's a means to absolute independence.
One thing was revolutionary. It was determined, in the spirit of absolute sovereignty, that the costs of maintaining the system would be paid with the currency of the system.
Bitcoin is the new gold, digital gold. Like with gold, the quantity of Bitcoin is limited. Like with gold, the more prospectors there are, the more difficult it is to find them.
What's mining? It's a big question, you know. It's an industry and it's a bit of a philosophy also, but most of all, it's like the cornerstone of Bitcoin technology. It's a currency system, right? So in the currency system, you either own currency or you're sending it. That's pretty much all you do with currency, right? And how you would usually build that into a computer system is that you have a database. And this database lists like who owns how much money. And when someone wants to send money, you just change the database. But if you want to do it in a decentralized way, like Bitcoin does it, all the participants in the Bitcoin ecosystem store a copy of the same database. And when someone wants to make a transaction, which is to change the database, then he has to coordinate with everyone else to make sure that everyone agrees that this is kind of okay thing to do.
It's more difficult to hack 20,000 or 100,000 computers to modify the database than to hack the computer of a single bank.
To send you a Bitcoin, I need to make a transaction. This takes place in a transaction group and is done by Bitcoin miners. They combine their computing power in a mining pool and generate a block. The miners compete to validate the transaction block.
The network kind of creates a very complex mathematical riddle that someone has to solve in order to progress the blockchain, to create a new block in the blockchain.
You have to try all the combinations.
If it were a coin toss, you'd have to throw a tails 90 times in a row. That would be impossible in a lifetime. That's why you have to repeat it billions and billions of times. It's not a complicated problem. It just has high material and energy costs.
Whoever solves the problem first wins. And they get Bitcoins. That's the motivation. He then says, hey, I won. The others say, okay, then validate the block. The block is added to the chain. That is how the transaction is validated, and you get Bitcoins from me. The Bitcoin blockchain is the registry that records all Bitcoin transactions, and it's been that way since the very first transaction.
The more time passes, the more a transaction is secured by previous transactions. To modify one, you'd have to modify them all on thousands of computers. The system is not flawless, but almost.
Mining is very important to ensure the security of the system. No one would invest this much energy unless they were confident that all transactions in the block are legitimate. The block can't be validated unless all transactions are legitimate, and the cost and effort would be in vain. The miner would have invested money and energy for nothing.
I trust the Bitcoin system, but I don't trust my neighbors, and I don't trust the miners, and I don't trust the transactions that I see, and I don't trust the blocks that I see. I verify everything, or rather, my computer does. And because everybody's verifying everybody, and because nobody trusts anybody, we can all trust the ultimate result because it's being checked by so many thousands of computers, because it's so difficult to tell a lie on the Bitcoin network.
When it comes to guaranteeing the value of Bitcoin, it is more sound than the gold standard. Bitcoin does not depend on anyone. It's supported by an entire network. There's no central bank. It's a transparent, dispersed registry that can't be attacked. A system so widely distributed can't be stopped, can't be captured. It's a fortress.
It does require a lot of computing power. That's why miners invest in special hardware, graphics cards, servers, etc.
People are worried that Bitcoin mining is using too many natural resources and is polluting the environment disproportionately. Of course, they're right. Sure, it's using power, of course. It's not a free resource. But we have to see it not only as a cost, but we have to see it as an investment. We're let's say, spending all this power and energy on Bitcoin. What are we getting?
Protecting privacy has a price, a high price. Cryptocurrency opponents pretend not to know that the entire digital world lives at the expense of our planet. Every virtual act leaves traces in the form of digital pollution. I'm not just talking about my program. Much of our life takes place online. Bitcoin is as useful as social networks and streaming services, and it will stay that way.